So wholesale and white label. And I'm even going to talk a little bit about collaborations, which kind of blur the lines sometimes of the in between. So
Right.
let's see. I did this last time. There we go. Okay. So I think we're all on the same page, but I'm just going to go over definitions to make sure that we are all talking about the same thing. So when I say wholesale, I mean selling your products either directly to a retailer or to a distributor who is then selling to a retailer, basically so that the retailer is paying a wholesale price. And
Yep.
then white label is making a product for someone else that they are then selling under their brand name. So you are essentially making a bunch of a product, handing it off to them, and then it's all on them to make the product go away. And then collaborations are interesting and don't always make sense for all brands, but they're kind of a white label, but often it is then a product that is branded with two different brands, maybe even three different brands, with the idea that every brand is gaining some extra exposure or even just credibility by the partnership. And those contracts will always look different depending on the collaboration, but I'll talk about a few when I get down there. I'll talk about a few that we've done just to give you some ideas of what it could possibly look like. So, diving in to direct wholesale. And folks like direct wholesale a lot because there isn't that middle person who needs to take a cut. You are selling directly to retailers. But the things to think about in doing that is order management, especially, as you grow. If orders are coming into your email box, are they getting lost in the other emails of running your business? I definitely recommend if you are going to do it that way, that try to set up a second email address where everybody's hopefully sending their orders to you. Not everybody listens, but it's nice to try. But then even figuring out that processing, as you continue to grow, if you're getting orders that are coming in through your email, are you then having to enter them into another system so that you can invoice, so that you can draw down inventory? All of those type of things. As you grow, you want to start to see how much of that you can integrate systems so that you don't have to worry about anything going wrong. When you are translating from an email, it is very easy to, pick the wrong color, the wrong flavor, or the wrong number of items. So that is where something like Faire is awesome because it also plugs into a lot of other systems. Like for us, we use Faire orders actually come directly into our inventory management system and then just appear actually in our ship station as an order that we print out every morning. And I know for food-based items, there's another wholesaler, another marketplace called Air Goods. So Dave, I would check out airgoods.com. There are a handful of other third-party wholesale marketplaces, but most of them have fractions of the traffic that Faire does. Faire has really won the game in that regard. Air Goods is giving them an okay run when it comes to food items, food and beverage, but they're still pretty new, so it's hard to see or hard to tell how long they'll stick around. Um, then you also want to think about, minimum orders. What makes it worth it for you to sell it at a wholesale price? When you are considering shipping and the packing of the orders, um, and that even, goes into that wholesale packaging. What, do you get your, in Dave's case, do you get your glass in 12 packs that are easy to fill and then put back and sell? Or do you get them without boxes, or do you get them in 48s? Or, everybody's glass is different. So you've got to consider what makes a good case size for people, or pack size in the case of illustrations. Are you selling 10, 20? What makes it worth it? And what is that minimum order? Sounds like you guys have both already thought about some of the, these things because you are selling. And marketing. Selling directly to retailers is really not much different than selling directly to a consumer. You still have to find them. You still have to be out there letting people know who you are and what you sell and why it's important. The messaging is slightly different, but you've still got to put energy and effort into marketing and sales. However, I know a lot of businesses think of their direct wholesale as sales versus marketing, where the marketing is for the consumer, but it's really a lot of exactly the same actions and processes that you're going through, and especially the assets that you need. And so there is still a cost to that. And point of sale support, once the product leaves you and goes to the retailer, do you have assets, photos, postcards, anything like that that helps the retailer make your product special? Tell people why it's important. And it can be as simple as you taking the time to write a nice little bio with a photo that you can send to them to put in their own format that fits their shop aesthetic, or have postcards already printed and ready to throw into your orders, so that people can frame them or pin them up next to your product to highlight why this is different. And in the case of food, do you need recipes to help move some of the products? Can you provide that to the retailer to help them continue to move? Another thing that we do is we have a public folder on Google that I put photos in, I put recipes in. There's all sorts of text about bitters, how to use them, and then about us. So there's some nicely formatted things that people can print out, but then there's also just kind of the raw assets that we tell all of our retailers, go here, use whatever you want. So often they're taking the photos and putting them on their social media because they want to show that they have all these great brands in their store. So just little things like that make it easier for them to sell and show that you are trying to support them. And by all means, ask what they want, ask what they need, and do your best to try to support them. And then, of course, the most important is the pricing. How do you price for wholesale? So I'm sure you guys have spent a fair amount of time thinking about this and hopefully have come up with pricing that makes sense. When I move to distribution, then you'll kind of see how it breaks down, and how having that initial pricing structure solid helps. So most retailers are going to work at kind of what they call keystone pricing. So whatever they pay for the product, they are most likely going to just mark up 50%. They're going to double and put it on the shelf. There are stores that do it differently for, various reasons, location, they sell premium goods, whatever. They want to be the discount store. But if you work with that general philosophy, that helps you. But you want to make sure that you're clear on your cost of goods. You are thinking about all the packaging, not only the individual items, but the case packaging. How do you have to then ship those cases? Are you using even bigger boxes with packing and all that? And the shipping costs. When you are selling direct wholesale, most retailers expect to pay at least a little bit in shipping and just eat that cost and you put it on the invoice. But if you can help by paying half of it and working that into your cost of goods, or even, over certain dollar amounts, offer free shipping, it certainly helps those volume buys. But, in the case of jams, which I know are heavy in glass, it's much harder to do. I get it. We're selling, liquid in glass too. So, but just to really think about, shipping costs and how you want to work it into that. And you want that price that it's going to land on the retailer's shelf to pretty much match what you were selling it. If you are selling direct, you don't want to undercut your retailers. If anything, make it easy for them to maybe sell it a little bit cheaper. But you also want to make sure that you are, kind of falling in line with anybody that's considered a competitor. Unless there is a very clear reason why your product is significantly more expensive or cheaper, So just, there are so many different ways to come at pricing that is not just how much does it cost you to make it, and how much do you want to make? So moving on to distribution. Are you guys any questions on wholesale on any of that? All right. So distribution then is selling even a bigger package. So maybe, direct retail, you're going to sell 2 to 4 cases per order. Distribution, you're probably going to sell a pallet or a half a pallet. It all depends on the size of your cases and the size of your product. And this is food. I honestly don't know when you are, what kind of size orders you would look at for distribution of home goods. So Bonnie, I hate that I can't give you more of an idea, but it is something to start, these are the things that you kind of want to do the research and figure out. What does your industry look like? Like, how are they expecting to buy things? And distributors are generally not sales reps. They are not going out and actively trying to get your product on shelves. However, they hopefully are putting you in a catalog that they are at least presenting to their retailers. So if folks are looking for new and different things, then they are going to find them. They might find your stuff, but you are still ultimately doing all of the sales, getting the deals closed, and then saying, this is who you order from. And capacity is definitely a consideration. Are you able to, make enough product to satisfy both that first initial order as they, get it into all of the stores that they want to get it in? But then what is that ordering cadence and how much do they expect? But I will say that is also generally not as predictable as folks want it to be. Oftentimes, at least in food, you will get this nice big first order. It's super exciting. They're telling you, yeah, we'll probably be placing orders every 6 to 8 weeks. But then it takes them a while to move that first round of products, and you don't hear from them for going on 3 months, and the next order is like a third. And, it takes a while for new products to gain traction. That's why distributors often want you already to be in the stores that they service. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing in that, if you want to go into Safeway wants you to be in a certain distributor, but that distributor doesn't want to take you until they know that Safeway is ready to place that order. So you're kind of going back and forth trying to manage both of those relationships to make it all come together. That's why smaller retailers like Market of Choice and New Seasons are great for getting started, because it gives you at least a small store count. And if you are able to get more of those and even service them directly in the beginning, then you can start to look at the bigger ones like KeHE or UNFI. But you don't have to go that route either. You can always ask the store, who do they like to work with? There will always be regional distributors, and they may or may not be a great fit for you, but there are other options. Like for us, I mean, we're an odd duck. We're beverage. So we're actually with a beer distributor for New Seasons. But up in Washington, we're with a small specialty food distributor called Crown Fine Foods. Um, they're a little better than UNFI and KeHE, and at least they're more communicative, but they still have chargebacks. They still want you to do tons of samples. So it's, in all these cases, you want to look at your industry and what types of distributors are they expecting to buy your product from. And I think, Bonnie, this is going to be a lot of research in looking at competitors and seeing how they're getting into these bigger chain stores, or just wider, how are they being serviced across the country. And then find out these questions about how does that industry work? What are the general expectations? Because there is tons of information about it. People love to share it, talk about it in terms of any industry specific. But what you were talking about, Dave, earlier with the, talking to KeHE a little bit, that fine print in those contracts is so key to making sure that you understand and you know what you're signing up for. Because I have heard, definitely more than a couple horror stories of folks having a great product. They're doing well in their local region, in Oregon, or even in Oregon and Washington, and they decide to go national with KeHE or UNFI or something like that. And they end up shutting down because they make that first big initial order. They're going to go into all these stores, but they have to agree to a free fill, which means they have to give some product for free. Usually it's a case or a half a case. So then it depends, how long does it take before they sell that, before they make the next order. And usually the first order doesn't pay net 30. The first order pays net 60, net 90, because they want to make sure everything's moving okay. So there's a lot of, like, you you often need to have a little bit of a, war chest to be able to go into larger distribution. I don't know if under other industries are as cutthroat as grocery is, but I would not be surprised if they're, very similar. And it
I'm
is,
in.
yeah,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
chime in real quick on that. So I've studied this whole thing, and I appreciate you mentioning Crown up in Seattle. One of my goals is to get more customers doing the white label, or in this case, one of our customers, he's already in with KeHE and all the Safeways with his Bloody Mary line that we use. So
Mhm.
our barbecue sauce, I'm going instead of us pounding the pavement trying to beat our door down, he's already got the relationship. Let's move it through him into KeHE because
Right.
he's already got that. Now, yes, that means a little bit lower margin, but he's got a big credit line and he pays us on time. That's what we want. Not nine, like you were saying, 90 days when you're talking about a 20 or $30,000 barbecue order, that can hurt.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And then thinking about the pricing, this is where you want to really look at your industry and you know, what the norms are. Because and I'm just going to do this for grocery to kind of walk you through it, is that so if your product costs 250 to make, and you want to make a 50% margin, which, is most food folks don't make that, at least not in the beginning, but it's nice to shoot for. You're going to sell it to the distributor at $5, who then is going to mark it up 30% ish. And that's what you have to figure out, because like KeHE doesn't mark it up quite as much, but they have a lot more chargebacks. So it's honestly not that much different. The distributor is, once they've marked it up 30%, they're selling to grocery at say 650-ish. And then grocery often works on another 30 to 40% margin. So if you say 40, then it ends up on the shelf around $9. But what I didn't account for in that, and that 50% margin, you could say, would cover your marketing and your overhead, but that's usually not enough. And your shipping, when you are shipping to distributors, you are paying the shipping most of the time. You're paying to get it to them, and freight, you're paying a couple $100 per pallet. Um, and then the stores also generally want to put it on sale at least twice a year, which gets charged back to you. So I would say then that you actually probably want to go more, you charge 750 and to the distributor, who then sells it to grocery at around $9, and then it ends up on the shelf at say 16, $17. And then you have that buffer zone for those chargebacks, the marketing spends, and the discounts that you're going to give 2 to 4 times a year, which are 10 to 20% discounts, for a month period of time, usually, where all the orders that come in that month are discount, you are paying back, because the distributor doesn't pay anything when you put things on sale. They still get the same amount of money. You get less. So it is a game. So it is, I think with any product, going and really looking at what are the expectations, what are the general structures, and plugging your product through, trying to figure out all those different costs and be solid on your cost of goods, be solid on your overhead. What are you paying yourself? What are you paying any additional labor, rent, electricity, all of that? I know, it can be tempting, especially in your case, Bonnie, to not put all of that in because we don't think about paying ourselves as much as we would an employee, but you should be getting paid at least as much as your employees and hopefully more. So, it works if you really take the time to do the research and figure it all out. And make sure that everybody's getting what they need, because if everybody gets what they need, everybody's happy and it generally works pretty well. So let's then talk about white label, because it sounds like, I think for both of you, this is probably more the kind of relationships that you're going to be having. Although I'm not sure, Bonnie, I could see it going either way. So the pros are definitely that it is extra revenue in a large chunk. That you don't have, you're not just selling one or two products at a time. And you're selling more than probably even direct wholesale, maybe not as much as distribution, but maybe. And in the case of anything that is really manufactured, oftentimes it's a great justification to help make sure that line keeps moving. You're paying a lot of money for the equipment that you need to make all of this stuff. So keeping it in use or allowing you to even upgrade to have more capacity, white labeling can often be a great way to bridge that gap or justify that upgrade. And generally, there's no marketing needed. Yes, there is some sales relationships to build that business if that is the business that you want to build, but you make the product and you hand it off and you get paid and you're done, which is sometimes a very beautiful relationship. The cons are that you are selling a service. If you really think of it that way, you are not just selling a product. You are taking this customer's idea, even if it's just literally slapping a different label on a product that you already make, but you are still making their idea into a reality. So there is a lot more customer service around that and meeting of expectations. Also, the production cadence in that regard can be also unpredictable. Do they already have regular customers themselves? So that they have good ideas of what they need on a monthly, quarterly basis so that you can do some planning around that. And I will say on the smaller scale, that gets harder and harder to get regular cadences because they are often building their own small businesses. And payment doesn't always work net 30 either, because you may be needing to put out money to get all the ingredients to then make this product. And depending on how long it takes you to make that product, get it packaged, get it all out the door and shipped, you're generally not invoicing until you're shipping. And then you're probably net 30. Um, so there is a little bit of at least having the resources to make it upfront. There are different ways to structure that relationship if you are doing much more of a co-packing and not so much the white label, where maybe they are actually buying all the ingredients and having it shipped to you. But there are some economies of scale if you are already buying these ingredients for your own business or for other customers. But just, again, it really comes down to where do you want your attention to be? Because I would say, depending on what kind of business, and this is probably the most key, what kind of business are you building? Because white labeling can be a distraction in that the customer, their projects always come before your own. Um, because if you want them to come back, you've got to have good customer service. You have to deliver on time. So it may mean your own production gets moved around, delayed, put off. Um, and it also is it's a different sales process. It's a different business. You are selling that service of co-packing or white labeling as opposed to the products that you maybe want to make. To do both of them is sometimes a struggle unless you have a division and you kind of have one person is running the white labeling co-packing and one person is running the direct to consumer product. Not to say it can't be done. I've definitely seen it be done. But it sounds to me like you're exploring it in a good way and recognizing that maybe that is the business you want to build because it's easier and you have access to ingredients through the farm that you then can just be using for other people's products. So, I think go into it eyes wide open. I mean, we've definitely done white label projects and they're kind of a love-hate for us because of that. It means we can't make any of our own product during that time because we're tying up all of our equipment. But as soon as it's done, it's out the door and it's, a few $1,000 sale versus a couple $100 here and a couple $100 there. So, um, you know, it is what you want to do. And I think then the last part of it is that, oh, that's right. I didn't make a slide for this. So is that expectations aspect of it. If you are going to go into any sort of collaboration or white label, really think about what is it you're getting out of that relationship. Is that the business that you want to build? Is it worth it? And hopefully, you can build a couple relationships maybe that are these ongoing projects that provide that steady income, and you decide that that's what you want to do more of. Or, sometimes that one-off thing here and there is great, and it's just that little extra bonus of cash that month, and you do it and you're done. And the other thing I would say, and this works really well for both of you, is who owns what in any of those arrangements. In terms of the food, if they're coming, if you are doing any recipe development in terms of co-packing, do they own the recipe or is the recipe yours? Can you use it again for another client? Can you use it for yourself? Illustrations. Are they asking for something specific that then they want to own? Or do you still get to own the illustration and use it in your own way? Those are just, that has come up definitely for us in some of, so we do white label bitters for another local company who makes a complementary product. They don't make bitters, but they want to sell it. It makes sense for them. So they buy, we make 3 to 4 batches a year for them. And the lovely thing is we make the bitters, we hand it off to them bulk in 5-gallon buckets and they bottle it and we don't even have, we don't have to deal with it. It's a lovely relationship. And the recipe is still ours. I can use it if I want to. I did develop it for them. I made it cheaper than some of the products that we make ourselves. Great. Everybody wins. But we do 2 products. One is a collaboration with Rogue Distilling, a dead guy whiskey. We actually use their whiskey as the base. They sell the whiskey to us, but at a discount. And then we use their logo, their name. We sell the product and they buy a small amount of it, but there's no agreement that they have to buy any certain amount. But we get to talk about the collaboration. It's a great product. They sell some, they use some. It's great. And we have a similar relationship with Westward Whiskey where we make hazelnut bitters. They sell a ton of it in their tasting room. They use it behind the bar, but the recipe is ours. We're just using their name and they buy what they want of it, and we sell as much as we want of it. So sometimes those co-branded collaborations are awesome in that somebody wants something that has their name on it, but they don't mind if your name is on it too. And, then they buy a decent amount of it, but you can still sell it in any market that you want to. So, I think it is really about structuring those deals in a way that makes sense, especially for you and hopefully for everybody.